And so the first thing that we really need to do, and when I was thinking about it, the movie Butch Cassidy and the Sundance Kid came to mind. And all throughout the movie, Paul Newman and Robert Redford would look at each other and they'd say, who are those guys? And that's really the first question. When we talk about the left, who are those guys? Who are we talking about? Who are our enemies?
That is a brilliant question, Dr. Dan. And with that question in mind, I actually wrote a book that I published just a couple of years ago, Deep State, the Invisible Government Behind the Scenes, because you hear a lot of people talk about they and them, right? They are doing this, they are doing that. Well, who is the they? Who is the them? And I think we need to recognize that there's multiple layers here, right? Your average Joe Biden voter across the street or down the block from you is not your enemy. This is typically somebody who was brainwashed in a government school, might have been further radicalized in a college brainwash camp, and then is sitting there watching CNN or MSNBC. If they had access to true information, they would very rapidly abandon their former beliefs and would come to more sensible conclusions, at least among the older generations. And so what we're dealing with here is a multifaceted enemy. Now, we talk about the left, and I do think there is an element of the quote-unquote left to the enemy that we are facing. And by enemy, I'm talking about the enemy of our republic, the enemy of our freedoms, the enemy of our families, the people who quite literally want to destroy civilization and make us slaves, at least make the survivors slaves. And so you do have the left. A lot of these people are useful idiots, as the communists infamously referred to them, in that they have been convinced to try to tear down what exists or what existed with a phony promise, a demonstrably phony promise of some sort of utopia where equality will reign supreme and there will be abundance and nobody will be hungry and everybody will be treated fairly and all these kinds of things. And some of these promises are quite appealing, right? I mean, we all want everybody to be well taken care of. We all want people to have food and essentials, things like this. But of course, that is just a marketing gimmick, right? The people behind the scenes who are manipulating these useful idiots have no intention of actually creating a utopia for you, and they don't even believe in this silly utopia. They believe in power. And so we need to make a sharp distinction between the useful idiots who've been manipulated into believing these things and the real evildoers behind the scenes who are doing the manipulating. These are not people who are necessarily idealistic, right? I don't believe for one second that Chairman Mao or Joseph Stalin or Pol Pot truly believed in communism as an ideology. Communism was always a smokescreen. It was a pretext, right? First of all, to find useful idiots to join your cause and help you accomplish what you want to accomplish, which is seize power, seize control, seize wealth. And secondly, to give your victims an intellectual justification for submitting. Right? Because if you just tell them, hey, you're all going to be my slaves now, nobody wants to voluntarily submit to that. But if you give them something that they can cling to, oh, well, we're working toward a better society, whatever, then they can kind of intellectually justify to themselves submission to or surrender to this wicked system. And so when you get into, who's really pulling the strings behind the scenes, and by the way, they manipulate conservatives and Republicans and people who otherwise would be on our side of the ledger very, very frequently as well. We may be a little bit harder to manipulate, but we certainly fall victim to that a lot.